Hey everyone, we've reached the end. It is the last podcast of my Sundance coverage. Woof, what a ride. I'm Elysabeth Alfano, host of the TV show, web series, and podcast, The Celebrity Dinner Party on WGN Radio. I'm going to run down my very final film recommendations of the great films that I saw or that I wanted to see but just couldn't get a ticket because they were too hot at Sundance. Right after the socials, let's get down to it. As always, to keep up to date with my celebrity interviews, you can subscribe to me on iTunes and YouTube at The Celebrity Dinner Party with Elysabeth Alfano, and check out my other YouTube channel at Fear No Art with Elysabeth Alfano. Of course, there's Facebook under my name, Twitter and Instagram at DinnerPartyCHGO, and when in doubt, you can always hit me up at thedinnerparty.tv. Now that that's out of the way, let's hit the list. Take notes, folks. I've got quite a list for you. I start with the documentary 3 Identical Strangers. It is directed by Tim Wardle, and it won the U.S. Documentary Special Jury Award for Storytelling. 3 Identical Strangers is part emotional family drama and part conspiracy theory. It's one of those incredible stories that you can't believe actually happened, which, as you know by now, is my kind of story. 3 Identical Strangers tells the astonishing story of 3 men who make the chance discovery at age 19 that they are identical triplets, separated at birth and adopted to different parents. The trio's joyous reunion in 1980 catapults them to fame, but it also sets them in motion on a chain of events that unearths a disturbing secret that they were intentionally kept apart. Eerie. The film goes way beyond their own lives and takes a stab at answering the age-old question, is it nature or is it nurture? Sadly, one of the triplets took his own life, and it's outlined in the film. But I did get to speak with the other 2, Bobby Shafran and David Kellman, about this film of their life from the red carpet at Sundance.
I think it raises more questions than it gives answers. It does talk about a study, and there's a lot to think about playing God and doing a study like that. And I think that's hopefully people will think about that.
What do you think?
I agree with what Bobby's saying, but more direct to your question, I think that it answers and addresses both the nature side as well as the nurture side.
So you felt an immediate connection when you came together after 19 years, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, but we did a lot of the things that we had never done before. We had to. At 19, we started doing very childish things that we didn't get to do as children. So we danced in the street. We literally stopped traffic on Lexington Avenue in Manhattan. I mean, it was great. We had a ball.
I can imagine the joy was overwhelming, and then at the same time, you had to process all the emotions that you had been intentionally separated. How long did it take to really process that for you?
Well, I think we were really initially just so absolutely happy as puppies together. We really weren't focusing either on anger. Our parents at that point were already angry, but we weren't yet really. It was all about us just being together and being happy.
And how long did it take for, the many stages of grief? So how long did it take for any anger to set in, David?
I think that it evolved over years as we matured, as we had our own families. I think we really started to understand just how impactful it was and how wrong that it was in terms of the separation. So I think it was something that evolved over time, and as you mature and as you have your own family, you have a much better understanding of just how terrible it is what they did.
And how is it for you seeing your story told on the big screen? Does it bring back a whole range of emotions, David?
Absolutely.
Is it tricky?
I don't know what you mean by tricky, but there's a lot of emotions.
Hard to watch.
No, it's not hard to watch. I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, there are times that you remember the fun times, you remember the tough times. So I guess, yeah, tricky was probably a really good word for it.
In essence, we really were looking for, well, what really found us, was when CNN and Raw came to us. We really what we were afraid of was somebody who would tell the story the way they wanted it told, as opposed to what really happened, how we really are as people, how it really felt, what we really went through. And I think they really captured it very, very well. And it shows who we are, how we lived, what we lost, what we loved. And you really do go on a ride. I mean, you're laughing at one point, but you will probably cry at another.
Quite the ride indeed. And even though I was on this red carpet, I did not get to see this film. So this is one that I will be watching for sure, either in theaters or online. Film 2 on my recommendation list is Bernard and Huey. And it is strangely, maybe aggravatingly, still a timely story of two men in their early 50s who remain basically stuck at 24. And while they don't commit any crimes, like what we're hearing about in the newspapers with Time's Up and Me Too and the women's movement, so they aren't doing anything illegal, but they certainly don't hold up any ideals, and they aren't at all what you would expect real men to be, and they're certainly not functioning adults. The roguish Huey and the nebbish Bernard are unlikely friends in the late 80s in New York. Decades later, a disheveled Huey crashes at reluctant Bernard's barren bachelor pad, and it becomes clear that these two just haven't moved on since they were 24. They still have a lot of growing up to do. The cast features Oscar winner Jim Rash, whom I love. He was co-writer on Alexander Payne's The Descendants, and he co-directed the Sundance winner The Way, Way Back. So I'm a huge fan, and he's a great actor here. And then we have Anchorman's David Kitchener. So just a great cast. The legendary Jules Feiffer wrote this screenplay in 1986 based on his characters he originally developed for his 1957 cartoon strips in The Village Voice. So oddly, and I don't think this was intentional, in many ways, this film shows what women have been raging against for all these decades, and it sadly still applies today. Geez, from 1957 to 2018, this kind of baloney is still applying today. I mean, does that mean that we just haven't advanced at all? Is the film saying that there's just no hope for some men and never will be, and that they'll never grow beyond being teenagers? Not so sure. I mean, I'm not trying to take this very funny film and make it a desperate attempt to explain all men. I'm absolutely not. But it just, it's coming out at a very interesting time. The film also throws women under the bus a bit, I think, because I had a hard time accepting that the audience would believe that any women would fall for these two dodo birds. That said, it is exceptionally written, and the actors just nail it, and these two pathetic characters are so very, very funny in their loserness, so I do recommend this film, Bernard and Huey. Now, at Sundance, if you have the rare bit of downtime, and I mean rare, in between red carpets, you want to actually rest your feet and see a movie with no specific reporting agenda. So I just kind of wandered into Shirkers, and I had zero expectations. But I came out incredibly surprised at how invested I became in this plot. And it goes like this. In 1992, teenage VHS bootlegger Sandy Tan and her fellow film geek pals Jasmine Ng and Sophie Sadiq shot Singapore's first road movie entitled Shirkers with their enigmatic Colombian-American adult mentor, George. After shooting wrapped, George disappears, and despite many communications stating the exact opposite, it becomes apparent that he had no intention of ever delivering an edited film version. For years, Sandy questions just what happened and how much she lost when she lost that film. Then, 20 years later, the untouched and unedited film reels are recovered, sending Sandy Tan on a trip through time and a review of her friendships and her state of mind as a young girl, asking herself just how she could have become enthralled with George, whom in the film we come to know and despise as a pathological liar and, much worse, a stealer of dreams. Shirkers won the Directing Award for World Cinema Documentary, and it's worth the trip through time. My next film is Quiet Heroes. While this film isn't groundbreaking cinematographically, it is a wonderful story of courage and compassion, and it's a story that stayed with me long after the film was over, so I recommend it. It is the story of Dr. Kristen Reese. She came to Salt Lake City with the hope and ambition of setting up a medical practice of her own. By chance, she arrived on the exact day the CDC released a report about a new infectious disease affecting populations of gay men. Due to religious conservatism and societal pressure, other doctors in Salt Lake City refused to treat this growing epidemic. In the entire state and Intermountain region, Dr. Reese, along with nurse Maggie Snyder, became the only doctor to serve all HIV/AIDS patients. This is the story of their fight to save the lives of a maligned population everyone else seemed willing to just let die. And it's a good story. My last 3 films were sold out and the hot ticket in town, and I didn't get to see any of them, but I highly recommend them because everybody was raving. So hopefully I'll see you in the theaters. The first film is The Tale. It's a film by Jennifer Fox of her story of being assaulted as a young teen, but not realizing that she'd been abused until she was in her 40s. Eerily timely, The Tale took Sundance by storm, and every screening, even for industry folks, every screening was sold out. And as I say, I couldn't get a ticket. I will certainly be watching on HBO, which was quick to gobble up the rights to this film. Another hot ticket was RBG, an intimate portrait of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It is directed by Betsy West and Julie Cohen. At the age of 84, Justice Ginsburg has created a breathtaking legal legacy while becoming an unexpected intergenerational heroine and a pop culture icon. But even many of her ardent admirers don't know the unique personal journey of this diminutive, quiet warrior's rise to the nation's highest court as a young lawyer. Ginsburg was a legal architect of the modern women's rights movement. As I said, this was another timely film for which I couldn't get a ticket, not even for industry screenings. But I cannot wait to watch this one on the big, fat screen. Go, go, RBG. Finally, directed by Bart Layton, American Animals was one of the first films at Sundance to garner a huge distribution deal. And the story goes like this. Real-life Spencer and Warren dream of remarkable lives beyond their middle-class suburban existence. They head off to college in the same town, haunted by the fear that they're never going to be anything special. Then, Spencer is given a tour of the school's incredibly rare book collection, and he describes it all to Warren. Suddenly it hits them. They could pull off one of the most audacious art thefts in recent history. Yes, this is a real-life story. They could steal the university's special collections library. Convinced somehow that they can get away with this, these two recruit their other friends to pull off the heist. Now, as you may remember, I have a personal history of owning an art gallery before I started this production company, Fear No Art, which, as you know, produces my podcast and my TV show, The Celebrity Dinner Party. So long before I was doing media stuff, I was in the art world, and so this movie is just right up my alley, and I can't wait to get a ticket to see it on the big screen. So there you have it, folks, the end of my Sundance coverage for 2018. You won't have a podcast from me for a little while now as my team and I are taking a big break. Woof! Until I see you at the next film festival, you can always subscribe to my iTunes and YouTube channels, The Celebrity Dinner Party with Elysabeth Alfano, and my other YouTube channel, Fear No Art with Elysabeth Alfano. Find me on Facebook under my name, and Twitter and Instagram at Dinner Party CHGO. Of course, there's also my website, thedinnerparty.tv. The editor on this pod is David Craig. Thanks for listening, everyone, and as always, don't forget to be vegan.